Can someone please explain to Jordan B. Peterson that there's a difference between freedom of speech and freedom from consequence? Do you agree there's a difference?
Well, certainly there's a difference.
And are you prepared to suffer the consequences that society may deem you need to suffer because of your views?
Yes, I'm prepared to do that.
What does that entail?
Are you open to learning?
Well, hang on.
That's not the question.
Hang on, that wasn't the question.
It's
That's
true.
right.
Well, so what am I willing to do? Well, I think that the Ontario Human Rights Tribunal is probably obligated by their own tangled web to bring me in front of it. If they find me, I won't pay it. If they put me in jail, I'll go on a hunger strike. I'm not doing this. And that's that. I'm not using the words that other people require me to use, especially if they're made up by radical left-wing ideologues. Now, if our society comes to some sort of consensus over the next while about how we'll solve the pronoun problem, let's call it, and that becomes part of popular parlance and it seems to solve the problem properly without sacrificing the distinction between singular and plural and without requiring me to memorize an impossible list of an indefinite number of pronouns, then I would be willing to reconsider my position. But I'm also partly opposed to this because it's been made mandatory and has the whole weight of the law behind it. It's like, this is a very bad idea. I believe this is a very bad idea. And I believe that the reason this has caused so much noise, tremendous amount of noise, tremendous amount of attention on YouTube, is because there are things that are at stake in this discussion, despite its surface nature, that strike at the very heart of our civilization.
If a trans person asked you, would you please refer to me by they and them pronouns, would you refer to them by those pronouns?
Might depend on how they ask.
So no.
Why do you have the authority to determine whether or not...
refer to me.
Why do I have the authority to determine what I say? What kind of question is that?
Why do you have the authority?
Why do you think it is that so much of what you say is so very popular with the alt-right?
It isn't. And you don't have any evidence for that at all. Any more than the evidence that alt-right people watch this show.
Neo-Nite website, Saviour of Western Civilization.
Oh, well, that was all taken apart today by a number of Jewish publications, by the way, showing that, first of all, that was all satirical commentary on the part of the alt-right, directed at taking me down, for example. And there was an alt-right article yesterday published saying that I was a Jewish stooge and shill. So this is absolute nonsense, and I don't appeal primarily to the alt-right. There's no evidence for that at all. It's the proclivity of...
I never said primarily, Jordan. What I'm interested in is why you think that you get the reaction that you do from the alt-right. Looking at, the Kathy Newman documentary.
What reaction?
Interview.
There's 10 million people watched that and commented on it.
I'm talking about what I saw, and I'm curious to know what your reaction was to the glee with which the alt-right seized upon that interview.
I don't accept. Should we deal with the death threats? I mean, she had, I think, a dozen.
I don't accept the concept that it was the alt-right that was doing this. There were 10 million people who commented on that video, and about 95% of them commented negatively on Kathy Newman's behavior. You think there's 10 million alt-right trolls watching that?
The problem with those angry women is that since at the end of the argument you cannot fight physically, you can't really deal with them.
That's not what I said. I said that that's one of the things that keeps conversation between men civil. Women can't argue with angry women. Women are often bullied by angry women.
What I meant was more, you said that, and I'm really not trying to paraphrase you or to put words into your mouth.
You are trying that directly.
No, it is things that you said that you cannot deal with those.
Yes, but don't tell me that you're not trying to put words into my mouth because you've selected what you're going to ask, and you selected it very carefully with a tremendous amount of forethought.
Well,
and there's a purpose for that. What is the purpose precisely?
I am quoting things that you said.
Why? What is it that you're trying to establish?
Because you said that.
I thought we were talking about masculinity.
We are.
No, we're not.
Yes, we are.
How are we talking about masculinity?
Because I'm asking you what you think of men and of women.
Basically what you've been trying to do, I would say, for the last 15 minutes is put me into a sequence of corners by accusing me of various forms of misbehavior. So why are we doing that? What's the point here?
These are things that you said. My job as a journalist is to ask questions about what you represent and the ideas that you defend.
Your job is also to select the things that you might ask about in some manner that doesn't indicate a substantive bias. You picked 3 things to talk to me about in the last 20 minutes that were very carefully selected. Why did you pick those things?
Because this is my job.
No, not necessarily. You could be asking me, for example, why I've spoken to 250,000 people live in the last 8 months. That might be more newsworthy.
Well, we're not going to have a big debate about journalism, but if a journalist doesn't ask the tough questions, how can you give the good answers?
But it depends on what the tough questions are. It depends on
I didn't think that they
they're...
would be tough. We're talking about things that you said. I mean, if it's easier to have conversation between men, because there is this underlying threat, you know, of a physical contact.
I don't think it's easier. It tends to be somewhat more civil.
Are you against the use of alternate pronouns?
I'm against the use of legislation to determine what words that myself and other people are required to utter.
But would you use alternate pronouns if a student asked you to?
I think I've made my position on that clear already.
Well, perhaps not to our audience at home who are just being introduced to this. Would you use alternate pronouns? And why not?
Because I don't believe that other people have the right to determine what language I use, especially when it's backed by punitive legislation. And when the words that are being required are the constructions, they're artificial constructions of people I regard as radical ideologues whose viewpoint I do not share.
Maybe you just think that women should be equally represented in the decision-making fora of our nation. Maybe that's really just about having proper equality in a body that's meant to be representative.
Well, I do believe that women should have... I don't understand your question, I guess.
I guess you don't. That's pretty obvious, unfortunately.
Well, how about if you phrase it more clearly, instead of just insulting me? Look at it this way. Let's talk about quotas for a minute. So there's a very wide array of jobs that are fundamentally done by men. So, for example,
Member of Parliament,
99.9% of
sorry, Alex, I'm going to
bricklayers.
stop sledging you now, I promise.
I'm happy to give my minute to Jordan.
99.9% of bricklayers are men. Should we have quotas for women?
Is bricklaying representative democracy?
That has nothing to do with the question. The question is if there's evidence of structural inequality and oppression because women aren't precisely represented at 50% in all professions at all levels, then why don't we have a conversation about having women represented in all professions at all levels? Why do we talk about the C-suite, for example? Why do we talk about politics and positions of power? Why don't we talk about it across the board?
Okay, so a trans woman is a real woman.
I don't really like the way those questions are formulated. Now, I don't know what that means. What do you mean a real woman?
Well, I'm asking you, in your mind, you know, it depends what you think a real woman is, but do you think a trans woman is a woman?
No.
Why not?
Because I think that women are capable, generally speaking, of having babies, and they have female genitalia, and they have an XX chromosome, and
people attack it.
Attack
as inherently attack the hierarchies of society as inherently unjust, right?
Well, they're unjust, but
yes.
they're also useful.
Okay, so you say they're useful. Some
well,
people would disagree
look at
with
it
that
this
proposition.
way. Okay, look at it this way. You obviously think that it's worthwhile to stand up and ask a question.
Yes.
So you think that standing up and asking a question is better than not standing up and asking a question.
Yes.
Okay, that's a hierarchy.
Yes.
Of values.
Yes.
Okay, without the hierarchy of values, you couldn't act.
Of course.
No, not of course.
Well, wait.
It's partly why I'm defending the hierarchy. Without a hierarchy, there's no impetus to act.
Hierarchy, right?
What's that?
There is a hierarchy in society, right?
No, there's multiple hierarchies in
society. Okay, there are multiple
society.
hierarchies in society, right?
Yes.
And you say that they are based in, you invoke the lobster, right? That they are based in nature.
Yes. I said that they were inevitable.
Yes, that they were inevitable. Some people disagree with that.
That doesn't mean that they're good.
But my point is that, this is generally relevant to it, you have a broader point than free speech. This is one of the things you talk about, yes?
Yes.
Okay. Whereas I think there are some other activists who focus on more exclusive.
I'm not an activist.
Yes. Okay.
I mean, like I said, you're doing fine, but it's just too much. Like I can't keep it straight.
Do you think that your behavior risks politicizing it, and do you think that politicization is justified?
I think my behavior risks politicizing it, yes. I would rather it not be politicized, and I'm doing what I can to manage that risk. However, it's become political in my country because the government implemented compelled speech legislation. So I wasn't complaining about that before it became political. Now, there is a time, even when you're detached in some sense from the political realm, that you can't be detached anymore. Well, I'm not happy with the fact that this has become politicized. You could say that I haven't done a stellar job in ensuring in every possible manner that this has remained neutrally apolitical. Probably true, you know, but I'm not particularly unhappy with the way things have gone so far. And I'm not happy with the radical left. And so if they're irritated at me, so much the better, as far as I'm concerned. So have I conducted myself perfectly? It's like, undoubtedly no. So I've got more than my fair share of faults, and a temper is one of them. But I'm muddling through.
I look at the studies, and I'm really also very much interested in studies like the analysis that was done by the American Psychological Society, which looked at 45 analysis of whether there's sex difference over 20 years. And its conclusion was that men and women are basically alike in terms of personality, in terms of cognitive ability, in terms of leadership. But what it did find was that media depictions of men and women as fundamentally different perpetuate misconceptions, as does workplace.
Men and women actually are more the same than they are different. But the issue is that small differences at the population level can turn into very large differences at the extreme. So, for example, men and women are broadly similar with regards to aggression, although men tilt a little bit more towards aggression. So that if you picked a random person out of the population, male and female, and you guessed that the male was more aggressive, you'd be right 60% of the time. But if you take the 1 in 100 most aggressive people, they're all male, and that's why the overwhelming proportion of people who are in prisons are male. Now, do you want to equalize that, just out of curiosity? What about bricklayers? They're 99% male, and we've got about 3/4 of the population now in universities in the humanities and social sciences are female.
Yeah.
Are we going to equalize that? And men work longer hours, they work more dangerous jobs, they're more likely to move, they're more likely to work outside. They're more likely to participate in jobs in the STEM fields that are scalable. They make more money for those reasons. And that's all hidden under the idea that the reason that men and women make different amounts of money is because of their gender. It's a very simplistic analysis.
When people talk about common ground, it's got to be founded on some kind of truth. And when we have feminists saying, I don't believe in the biological differences between men and women, well, that's why it's controversial. Where do you go from there? That's why it's controversial to say what you're saying, and it's controversial to say, hold on a second, maybe a girl on testosterone therapy winning high school wrestling meets is a problem. That's controversial.
Yeah, maybe that's a bad idea. It's just possible that that's not a very good idea. You know, I mean, it's hard to imagine that could be the case. But, well, in this idea that I don't believe in the biological differences between men and women, it's like, well, what do you mean by believe? Exactly. It's like you act out your belief. You know, I mean, what the hell does that mean? And what do you mean? See, what do you mean by belief? What do you mean by biology? And what do you mean by gender? Like, as soon as you put those three concepts together in a sentence that says, I don't believe in the biological difference between the genders, you throw the meaning of all three of those words up into the air so far that no one can tell what you're talking about, including you.